I don't want anybody, passing out. No, sir, you went too far.
Jenny's ice cream is always a good prelude and poster to signings here. So.
Right. Are we ready, Patrick? Oh, we are live. Sorry. We were encouraging some of the audience to get a drink before everybody dies of dehydration. Thank you all for coming out on a very hot night in Phoenix. And thank you, virtual audience, for joining us. And I am so delighted to see my longtime friend, Dan Fesperman. We've been together for all of your books, one way or another.
Yeah, going back to 1999, I guess, when the first one came out.
It was the first one, and that one. Tell me what awards did it win?
That won the John Creasy Dagger Award for Best First Novel.
Which is the British Crime Writer Association.
British Crime Writers Association, yeah.
And got all kinds of honorable mentions. It's a marvelous book, and it comes from your background in journalism, right?
Yeah, I was a correspondent for the Baltimore Sun, and I was reporting on the war in Bosnia, and I was in Sarajevo during the siege, and the book grew out of that.
Yeah, well, it did in a frightening way, but
Yeah.
I think there are actually very few books about Bosnia
That's true.
and that siege. So yours has always been kind of a landmark in that respect.
Well, as hard as that one was to get published, I know why there were very few, because publishers said nobody wants to read novels about that. So it was tough getting it off the ground. But they also told Martin Cruz Smith, they said no one wants to read about a Russian detective, too. So
I know.
they're not always right about these things.
Arkady Rinko, we just lost him.
I know.
And one of the last things I did at Thriller Fest in June was record a message on his daughter's phone so that she could play it for him. Because all of Martin's books, since we opened the store, he started writing before we started in 1989. He had signed for us or been for us. Yeah. He was one of my favorite people.
Yeah, and his books are just lovely, wonderful books.
But happily, the last book, Hotel Ukraine, did come out, and they were able to read him some of the great reviews before he died. And it's a digression, but I'll say it anyway. One of the brave things I thought he did was Parkinson's was what he died from. He suffered, and he gave it to Arkady. Yeah. So that in the course of the books, Arkady had to manage the disease in the same way that Martin did. So I thought that was a really brave thing to do.
Yeah. No,
right.
wonderful.
So we're here to talk about Pariah. I think of Dan as an American John le Carré, as I have said. He's written a whole string of absolutely marvelous spy stories.
Thank you.
I don't think you've ever written a series, have you? Have you had to continue?
No, my first two books had the Balkan detective in it, but and there were recurring characters in Safe Houses. The woman who was the main character in Safe Houses. The sidekick was the main character in the following novel, and then in Winterwork, she also appeared as sort of a secondary character.
Right, she did, but she wasn't the lead character. I mean, Winterwork
she was the co-lead in Winterwork.
Yeah,
but
all right.
Yeah.
But still not a series in the way that you might think of that. I loved Winterwork. We actually have a copy of it still up in front. So how long does it take? And I think we should mention this before we start talking about Pariah, because this is a book where actual real-life events are mirroring what happens in the book.
Yeah.
When did you write it?
I wrote it in 2023. I wrote it before the election year, and then my publisher said, we really don't want to publish it during an election year because with a book like this, the public's too distracted, and we want you to slow down. And so I took a little bit more time writing it and rewriting it. And then the elections came along in 2024, and I thought, oh, now I'm going to have to change things. And what surprised me was I realized there were only about 2 or 3 sentences in the book that I changed. I had to sort of account for what happens if the other side wins the election, what happens to the agency, the CIA, and this investigation, because this incoming administration might not like it, the results. So I had to account for that possibility, but that was minor. And what is weird to me is how timely the book feels now, even more so than it did then, even though it's set in 2023. So.
It's very timely, and I think, describing what happens in it is, or what it turns on, is celebrity diplomacy. We actually have seen that
Yeah.
in this administration. And so tell me what it is that you sort of mean by that. And I'm not sure if that's your term or whether that's a term that all of the glowing reviews, including my own, have assigned to it.
I think that is a term of the reviewers. It was interesting to see that. I didn't think of it that way, but I don't know. I see it more as so what the effect of a celebrity personality and celebrity culture, what that does to the people themselves, what that does to the people who are observing them or following them or have expectations of them. It shapes what they think they can get out of them, things like that. And this main character is a fallen comedian. He was also very briefly a Democratic congressman. So he's not the type that the crowd that he ends up falling in with in this book would necessarily gravitate to at all, nor would he gravitate to them. So he ends up sort of folding himself into that into that type of people, and trying to get some information from them, and and the rest is in the book.
Well, it is in the book, but I think to me there's an echo in there, celebrity diplomacy, that basically you're taking somebody with no qualifications
Yeah.
for the job at hand, which
Yeah.
we are actually seeing
Yeah,
happening all around us at the moment.
Yes. We see plenty of that. Yeah.
We do see plenty of that. This book works because our comedian who stumbled over Me Too, if I recall,
Yeah, he did.
and has kind of fled, and he's living in kind of a beach exile.
He's gone to Vieques, which is off the coast of the mainland of Puerto Rico. And it's a U.S. possession, but you go there and you don't really feel like you're in the U.S. And so he's gone there to kind of hide out when he's approached by these three people from the CIA, telling him he is soon to be approached by people from this Eastern European country who want to bring him there to entertain their leader.
Right. So, I mean, there is some suspicion, and I've been to Hungary, and in fact, I was in Hungary when Orban was running for election, and I remember how terrified the Hungarians that we were around were of what he was going to do, and indeed, he has proved to be the kind of leader they were terrified would exceed. So, did you have Orban in mind?
I had Orban in mind when I was thinking of this country. The country I crafted is called Bolrovia. And the leader is Nikolai Horvats, and he's a bit like Viktor Orban in that he has cracked down on the media. He's sort of brought it to heel in his own ways. He has cracked down on the universities. He has cracked down on all types of dissent. And if this is sounding familiar for what we're seeing right now here, it is kind of the template for what the current administration here is doing, which is why Republicans flocked to Hungary and loved Viktor Orban and had certain conventions there and formed a real alliance with him. They liked the way he did business. They took a lot of lessons from him. And whether you were a Republican congressman or, say, a Fox News personality, they were all gravitating to him. So in this book, the same thing is happening with Nikolai Horvats. He's attracting a lot of right-wing media figures who are going over there to sort of pay homage to this guy in 2023, thinking this could be the model for what we want to do in the United States if we can get our guy in. And we all know who their guy was or is.
So the CIA thinks that, what's the name of our protagonist here?
Lauren Witt.
Okay. They think that he might be successful because the Orban character is a fan.
Yeah, Lauren doesn't really think he'll be successful. She's very skeptical of the whole operation, but the CIA is desperate because they've had their entire network of most of their undercover people in Bolrovia rolled up by a very efficient internal security chief. So they're casting about for any way to try to make a comeback because they sense that big things are about to happen here and unholy alliances may be about to take place. So they need someone, anyone, close to the top. So what they see is that Nikolai Horvats goes on Twitter one day, even though our comedian Hal Knight has already gone off the map and is in hiding and is in seclusion on this island. And he invites Hal Knight because he loves his comedy videos, he loves his movies, and sort of the subplot to that is he speaks excellent English, and he polished and learned a lot of his English partly by watching this guy's comedy videos. So he has a real soft spot for Hal Knight and his sort of sophomoric frat boy type of humor, sort of bro humor. And the films are the same way. They're the type of films like maybe some of the early Seth Rogen films that appealed to 15-year-old high hormone boys, and that type of humor. So he wants to have him over as his honored guest because he thinks that the whole Me Too movement and how they've sidelined Hal Knight, he thinks that's a great injustice. And he says, come to our country where you will still be appreciated. But of course, Hal hasn't seen this because he is signed off of social media. He's not connected at all. So the CIA sees it. They get in there ahead and they say, look, these people are going to come looking for you. They want you to come. We want you to accept the invitation, and we want you to report to us while you're there.
So, what kind of intelligence are they thinking he might gather? Because I mean, he's completely inexperienced, and if what he's getting is a fanboy, what is the Orban character going to actually say to him?
They want any kind of observations they can get from inside the inner circle because from that they think maybe they can identify people to approach, because they have just had 4 sources within the government locked up.
Okay.
And they have lost their sources along with their own
So
people.
it's not so much that he's going to be feeding them back useful intelligence as that he's going to be kind of stalking or marking potential people that they may be able to turn.
And giving them insights on people maybe that they already have their eyes on.
Okay.
Any inside intelligence they can get. And they're desperate, and it's a Hail Mary. And they know it's a Hail Mary, which is why they send in Lauren Witt, who isn't exactly one of their favorites. She's qualified to go in there because she kind of roves that part of Europe for them. But she's not one of their favorites, so they send her, and they figure, well, if it flops, it'll fall on her anyway. So
she's going to be the handler
she'll
for
be
Hal
the handler
Knight. Is
for him.
that
She's
the idea?
operating under a business cover for a public relations firm that does business there. Yeah.
Okay. And so is Hal, I mean, not giving much away, but is Hal actually able to spot any potential person that can be turned?
Hal, despite his own expectations, actually stumbled us onto something pretty interesting, but
we're
then
not
it
going to
gets
say
very complicated.
Right. We don't need to give that part away, but
And he's hoping to lay low. When the Borowians invite him, they give him the assurance, look, the last thing he wants is a bunch of new publicity saying now he's the sidekick to this horrible right-wing leader that only Republican extremists like. And he doesn't want that either, but the Borowians say, don't worry, this will all be on the down low. The parties will be private. We'll keep this secret. But he's wise to that. He knows how these celebrity things work. And he knows eventually it's going to come out, but he thinks, what the heck, maybe this is my only chance at some level of redemption.
so is he actually looking to resurrect at least an entertainment career?
He's not. He's looking to sort of, what he'd really like to resurrect is a relationship with a woman that he worked with and was on the verge of marrying, and they had a nice creative partnership. And, of course, that went up in flames with his moment of infamy as well. And so she, meanwhile, is trying to resurrect her career because, she didn't do that. So she's distancing herself from him. So his one hope is that maybe if he can earn a measure of redemption and do something worthwhile and not for himself, that maybe that'll be one way to at least renew that friendship.
Well, I understand that, but if he can't actually talk about it, because if he talks about the one thing worthwhile, he'll blow it up.
Well, as the CIA people tell him early on when they're meeting him, they say basically, look, if this goes well, and a year from now, after this is long done, we have ways of releasing this stuff without releasing it, which is true. The CIA always has ways of leaking things they want leaked out there. So they tell him eventually, if this goes well, word will get out and we'll verify it. We won't publicly comment on it. We'll act like, no, we can't say anything about that. But it will get out and you'll have yourselves a bit of redemption. And even if no one ever finds out, you'll still know, won't you? And that really kind of appeals to him because he doesn't think very much of himself at that point. So.
Right. So, just as a minor question, but worthwhile, what's he doing for income? And are they offering him any kind of financial support for this?
They're not, but his movies are still very popular. He gets
Oh, so he's got,
residuals are
all
fine.
right.
Yeah,
So he
he's
still
living
has
off
an
his
income
residuals
from that.
Yeah,
I mean, that's always a big question when, even doing amateur sleuths. And
Yeah.
that's one reason for a long time clergymen
Yeah.
or priests and all were really, or rabbis. Remember Rabbi Small, one of my favorites, were very popular as sleuths because they had a guarantee, they had an income,
right.
and they actually had leisure
Not a very
time.
big income, but
Well, no, but it was different. I always used to laugh at there was one particular series that where the protagonist owned a mystery bookstore, sort of like the Poison Pen, and and she was the only person working in her bookstore. And every time she went off sleuthing, she had to put a close, and there was no way that was
author events were canceled.
well, and so I mean, it's there really does need. I mean, if you're a police person or
Yeah.
on the payroll at a government agency or whatever it might be, and you have an income, then that frees you up to do some things. But if you are running a pet store or a bookstore or whatever, it doesn't. And I kind of miss Father Brown is still on television.
Oh, yeah.
Must be
It
like
is.
23 seasons or something,
Yeah.
And so, in a way, Hal is in an okay position as long as he
He's
is
fine,
getting
yeah.
royalties, residuals, whatever
Yeah.
it might be.
Yeah.
He can actually kind of afford. So when he's hiding out, it isn't.
And he's not exactly living in luxury, but
No.
he doesn't want to. It's another form of sort of self-punishment for him.
Right.
And he's just trying to be somewhere that isn't popular because he doesn't want to be among the crowds.
So did he really cross the line with his Me Too thing, or was it
He
misinterpreted?
did. It wasn't anything actionable in a court of law,
Okay.
but it was very actionable in the court of public opinion. So
Okay.
yeah. So he
So-
failed in that way, and also he had reached the point where he had no more respect for his own work, and I think when this kind of knocked him out of showbiz, he almost saw it as a relief. I think he had seen running for Congress as one way out of that, but he'd only been in office 6 months by then.
Well,
so.
he was just trading one show for another.
Well, that's the way he came to see it very
Right.
quickly. It was like as he put it in his statement when after the incident, when he quit, he said, I will be resigning from the entertainment industry, and not to be redundant, also the U.S. Congress. So,
Makes perfectly good sense. So in your past books, you've had some real professionals. You've had
Yeah.
actual assassins. You've had actual intelligence people. What moved you? And it's been a little while since Winterworks. So what moved you to write this particular book?
yeah, it's hard to say. I can't even remember exactly when the idea came to me to sort of cast a comedian as being recruited by the CIA. I think it was more that I came at from the idea of when I saw how the Republicans were gravitating to Viktor Orban and going over there and holding conventions there. I thought somewhere in there's a book. And then I kind of came at it sideways with this character, Hal Knight, the comedian, who would be used. And I thought, what if Viktor Orban was a big fan of, anybody, Adam Sandler, anybody else, or Al Franken. Al Franken comes to mind, but what Al Franken did is far less offensive than what Hal did. But anyway, it was that type of a character that came to mind, sort of a comedian, congressman who quit in disgrace.
So I have to say that when I read it originally, it almost felt like I was reading a satire.
Yeah, there's a lot of elements of satire in it. And I think one reason, what I found it, when I decided to set it in a fictional country, I thought that's going to be the hard part, creating this country, this capital city, this security apparatus, the favorite bar where everyone goes. I discovered very quickly that I really enjoyed that. And I also discovered that when you're working with a fictional location, your arc is toward satire. I'm not quite sure why that is. But you think of some satirical novels like Scoop by Evelyn Waugh, fictional country in Africa where the British press corps descends. Fictional locations seem to lend themselves very well to satirical writing. So I think that it just colored my writing once I made that decision, and it almost happened without even thinking about it.
So you enjoyed it.
I did enjoy it. I enjoyed writing it a lot. So.
And I might say, for those who haven't had a chance to read him, Dan has had some really amazing reviews. Big piece in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, all kinds of. So when I say it's a book for the moment, it's not just a book reflecting the moment, but it's a book that people seem to have seized upon. So have you had any significant, film interest?
Weirdly, I can't name any names of companies, but my film agent has had about 7 different contacts at this point. So, which I've had books optioned before. Safe Houses may be about to go into production in Europe for Apple TV. I should know that in the next month or two. But nothing like this, where it was almost instantaneous. I keep getting these emails that has your, are your rights available? I refer them to the film agent, and they're big companies, so, and in the industry, so something will come out of that. What? I don't know. Will it be produced? Well, that's always another question. So many things get optioned that never get produced. But
I can see that this role might appeal to some of the actors you've already mentioned.
And also having some experience writing teleplays for some stuff that, speaking of, never got produced, but with good people, and seeing what they've written and how it works, it would be a very easy book to adapt. There isn't much you'd have to change. Everything has to be carried by dialogue or visual. Right. And so it would be an easy book to adapt to either, a limited series or even a film or what. So I think that's probably also attractive, and it wouldn't be that expensive because it's not a period piece.
Right. No,
and it's a generic Eastern European capital. You could take the cheapest one in Europe, offering lots of incentives.
I've done several Danube River cruises, and I think it's Bosnia itself. What's the country right below Hungary? It is.
Well, I mean,
it's a little, or on your way to Hungary. I'm sorry, it's.
Well, you've got Austria, you've got Slovenia.
Slovenia.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Slovenia is beautiful.
But it's not that one. It's
Croatia is the next one.
Yeah, but it's a little one right on the river.
Maybe Albania is in the middle of all that, and that's small. But
I'll think of it. I have this come up several times. I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, my point was it's very small and it's very poor, and so they have not reconstructed. I mean, it's like it's already like a film set. And when I've been there have been all kinds of movies being made in this little country because it
looks perfect.
And it's sort of a no, not Bulgaria.
Liechtenstein.
No, I'll look it up on the map. It will come to me. Well, you always stop on these trips between Budapest.
Albania is very hot right
way
now
to Budapest. It's the capital city of. It's a very.
Budapest, capital city of Hungary.
No, I understand that. I think it's between Vienna and Budapest, but it will come to me. Anyway, I'll look it up before I drive
further
myself
north,
crazy.
you've got the Czech Republic and Prague.
No. It's actually on the river.
Okay.
Right. It's not Eastern European, and that's. I'll look it up because I feel like an idiot having brought it up. But my point is that there are indeed inexpensive Eastern European or Eastern European
there are
appearing companies where where you could do that. Over the years, I found it really fascinating that writers, for whatever reason, suddenly write a book for the zeitgeist, and you can't. No. Might be no. I'm going to look it up. I swear.
Because old Yugoslavia had split into 14.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's one of those little guys, right? On
Not
the
Montenegro, because that's further south.
That's right. No, right on the river. I'll find it on a map. I have to look at my phone, and then I have to do that. But what my point is that you can't actually write for the zeitgeist. Nobody can do that.
Yeah.
But over the course of time, people have for years said to me, why, let's take the firm, for example. Why was the firm such a gigantic hit?
Yeah.
If you really look at what was happening, it came out the first year law firms were allowed to advertise.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, all these billboards and everything went up. And so people were willing to think a criminal law firm,
Yeah.
or whatever, was a possibility.
Yeah.
The Da Vinci Code, think about
Yeah,
the Da
yeah.
Vinci Code. The Pope was dying.
Yeah.
All the pedophilia among the clergy had been revealed.
Mhm.
There were other stuff. And so people were willing to believe in kind of a dark heart of the Catholic Church.
Yeah. Or Conclave, which
Or-
was
well, yeah.
enjoyed. Came out at just the right time as a film. So
Well, it did, and Daniel Silva's book, An Inside Job, pairs very well with
Yeah.
Conclave. Not only in the sense that it takes you inside, the curia and kind
Yeah.
of the politics of electing
right.
a pope, and in both cases, a very unlikely candidate
Yeah.
turns out to be the new papa,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
But anyway, you seem to have accidentally written, or maybe accidentally is not fair, but you have written a book that kind of hits the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. As I said, I was at first I was kind of irritated that my publisher wanted to wait a year, but it turned out that was the smart move. So yeah.
So what are you working on now?
Now I'm working on a book which will take the main character in winter work, Emil Grimm, a East
Yeah.
German Stasi foreign intelligence person who, in winter work, had just lost his job and just lost his country because of reunification, and was kind of worrying about his future. This will pick up with him 5 years later, where he's living under a new identity, and the CIA comes back to him again because there's a bit of unfinished Cold War business that they want him to help them attend to.
So you really do like the spy story genre.
I do.
Have you ever thought about writing something outside it?
I have. What really got me hooked on spy novels, more than, say, detective novels, because I'd written some of those early on, was when I was working on this TV project of stuff that never got produced. It was going to be a dramatic series about the early history of the CIA.
Uh-huh.
And I was working with the guys who had written The Wire, so it's not like they were inexperienced at this. And
We should pause and say that you live in
I live in Baltimore. Yeah,
So,
I
hooking
know all
up with
these
The Wire
guys. Yeah.
would make perfect
and I worked at the Baltimore Sun with David Simon, who
Right.
did The Wire. So I was working on that, and in addition to be a writer for that show, I was also the main researcher before we began to write. And over about a 6-month period, this was 15 years ago. So over a 6-month period, I went interviewing all over the country about 24 former OSS and CIA people who had worked for the agency, either in the Second World War when they worked for the OSS or coming out of it, had worked for the CIA in the 50s, the 60s, on into the 70s. And I compiled so much great material that I got completely absorbed in that world. And I felt like I knew it pretty well. So even though that show hasn't gotten produced, it gave me so much material for my books, and I've used a lot of it. I'm about to go back to some of those notes for a scene I'm writing in the book I'm working on now for a guy who's working for the CIA, whose father also worked there, and grew up in Georgetown, and that whole social milieu they had where they were all partying every weekend together back in the 1960s. So, yeah, when you get that much good material, you can't just let it lie. Any writer who gets that much material is going to milk it for all it's worth. So that put me down that path.
So how long did you keep your journalism career going after you wrote your original books?
About 6 years. I took a 1-year leave in the middle of all that to finish my third book, but my first book was published in '99. In 2005, I quit for good at the Sun. And it was good timing for me because I had been a foreign correspondent, and
Right.
that was the era in 2005 when the Sun was closing the last of its foreign bureaus. At one time we had 6 of them, and now they have none. And
I know,
so I
journalism
sort of
is not what it was.
yeah, I
that's
feel
for
like I
sure.
sort of caught the last train out, and in that sense, as a correspondent for a paper of that size.
Well, I have looked this up, and it's Bratislava is the city I
Bratislava.
was trying to think of.
Bratislava is what?
Right.
Yeah,
It's north of Budapest on
Yeah, yeah.
on the river. So it has irritated me forever. So
and it's the capital of Slovakia, right?
right,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
right. So happily, thank you.
Half of the
I've been
former
meaning to look it up
Czechoslovakia.
forever, and because this is not the first time I've
Yeah,
mentioned
yeah.
that, and I keep forgetting. Right. I've also been to Tallinn, Estonia, and Bruges, Belgium, and
Yeah,
some of
yeah,
those
yeah.
other cities where it turns out that it was an advantage to be a poor backwater,
Yes,
and
yes.
that you have now survived to be both a film capital and a tourist destination. Which works out pretty well. Over time, you've been to some interesting places. We've been to Afghanistan, and you've had some really dark
Yeah.
characters and all. So I
Yeah.
think maybe that's one reason this book has been a bit of a surprise to a lot of
Yeah.
people. It's really been a new version of you.
Yeah, that's true. And I've always enjoyed humor in spy novels. Like I love the Slow Horses series that Mick
Yeah.
Herron writes. And so it was. And what was interesting was one of the review in the New York Times also mentioned a long ago novel I wrote, Layover in Dubai, and
Right.
and also mentioned that for its humor. And I thought, was that book funny? So I went back and I read the first chapter, and I thought it was funny. And it was the opening chapter is this hapless character in this crowded sex bar in Dubai, and everything's going wrong, and it was funny. So it wasn't like I hadn't written sort of with a edge of humor before, but yeah, I guess more in this sense it was, and more with a level of satire at times as well.
Right. Well, I mean, there were serious things going
Yeah.
on.
Well, and there's serious things going on in this book
this
as well.
book too,
Yeah, yeah.
right? But anyway, so what kind of have you heard from readers in particular? That's a new feature of being an author is with social media. You can now
Yeah.
hear directly.
No, so far the response has been really nice. I've gotten some great response. So
I think that's grand.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you were able to come and talk to us about it.
Yes.
So, any questions from anybody here that you'd like to ask?
I wonder if you could write this novel today with the way the CIA is now.
Can you repeat that before you answer?
in what sense? In what way you mean the CIA is now? I mean they're running for cover. I mean they're from their own masters, but yeah. Yeah. Oh, I mean, you could write this, but if this book is adapted for film, I would imagine they'd want to set it now, because in the book, the CIA officer who's running him as an agent in Bolrovia, when he starts to rub elbows with these visiting American media figures, she gets kind of nervous, and her boss back in Langley gets very nervous because it's like, look, we don't want to piss the wrong people off. There are acts of Congress that we're not allowed to spy on Americans abroad, and we have to get approval from a FISA court. And if we do that, this will leak, and there will be hell to pay. So he wants her to withdraw him and tell him to back off from what he's burrowing deeper into. That would go double if you said it in the current administration. There would be pressure even greater within the agency to, avoid these people. Don't go close to them. They're our friends. They're not somebody to spy on. We don't care what they're doing. If you think they're doing something wrong, then look somewhere else. There would be a lot of pressure to do that. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if there is some film adaptation, and then they'll just say like, oh, we're setting this right now. We're not setting it before the election. It'll be after the election, because it would be even more of a pressure cooker for the agent and the CIA handler under the current circumstances.
So remind us, what is, in those of us who read spy stories from English writers, hi there, certainly know that there's a big difference between MI5 and MI6 in terms of what they can do. MI5 is the domestic arm, right? Or is it backwards?
That's the simple version, but also MI5 does some foreign work. If it's a British, more so in the British Empire days, the MI5 did a lot of work abroad because domestic security included all parts of the, like Palestine when the British had the
right.
the British Mandate. So MI5 was working there, not MI6. Now it is more of a domestic-foreign divide because there isn't really anything left of the British Empire. But yeah,
But so MI6
it's
was
roughly
the,
equivalent to the relationship between the FBI and the CIA.
exactly. That's kind of the direction I was going. We were
Yeah.
saying before the program started that Stella Remington once came to visit us, and what was her job exactly?
She was the first female head of the MI5, and after she retired, she wrote about 4 or 5 nice novels.
She wrote, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure she didn't have like a co-author or something.
Yeah.
But, she did. But I remember that the thing I'm trying to remember, most worried about, I hope I remember this right, was native-born Britons who'd been converted to, because they were harder to spot than somebody who'd come into the country or whatever. So,
right.
and we're seeing that, in fact, that she was right to really worry about that.
And there's so many different ways you can be radicalized. You can be radicalized Muslim. You can be radicalized, right wing. You can be radicalized left wing. You can be, a lot of people can be radicalized and sort of come out of nowhere seemingly, and because you're not on their radar.
But in theory, the CIA is looking outward.
The CIA looks
FBI
outward, and even the FBI also has a role abroad. The legat, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's the legal attaché is an FBI person in every embassy, and so is the assistant to them. And they're looking at some, they are allowed to sort of investigate Americans abroad. So they do have a role abroad as well in that sense.
Anybody else have a question? Patrick, do we have any questions from the virtual audience?
Okay.
One of the questions came in, I'm curious about this too. What kind of comedy do you like? What are some of your favorite stand-up comedians? British humor, American?
What kind of comedy do I like? Okay. Well, I was a great listener to comedy albums when I was a kid, and my comedy growth as a kid from high school onward was George Carlin. I memorized those by heart. I was a big Bill Cosby fan, speaking of Me Too and being neutralized. And because his early comedy routines were just fantastic. And those albums. In college, I became completely devoted to Monty Python. And Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Anyone who dated me in those years remembers being dragged to late shows of that time and again until they could memorize it, whether they wanted to or not. And these days, the kind of comedy I like to read are, say, like a Mick Herron novel, something like that. And they do tend to be often British because he's very witty. And it's a very intelligent brand of humor that you see in those books. And there is a lot of satire of the whole bureaucracy and its failings and the motivations of all these politicians who are self-glorifying. So Jon Stewart, John Oliver, satirical humor, Stephen Colbert, all those types of things that are being punished these days by the networks. So I like politics. I mean, I like humor that has a political edge now, maybe as a survival mechanism. So,
Carlin sure got better as he grew.
yeah.
Serious
Yeah, and if you want to see a great bit in comedy that sort of combines in some ways politics, even though politics never comes up in it, Carlin was a master on language. If you want to see a great bit, look up his comedy bit about the difference between baseball and football and the language that's used to describe it. And football is this whole militaristic, you drive it down the field and destroy your enemy and with your ground game and all this stuff. And then when you hear the military, they're always using football analogies. And he was all over that. And it's a wonderful routine. And he says, baseball, you play on a green meadow and the object is to go home. And so it's a wonderful routine that's kind of Carlin at his essence. So. Yeah, you have an error, exactly. Right. In football, it's, a penalty. And, yes, long bombs to destroy the opposition. So, yes.
Who among
Oh, so many. I like Charlie Cumming in Great Britain. I like Joe Cannon is really wonderful. Paul Vidic, really wonderful stuff. Ilana Berry, who writes in the name I.S. Berry. She had her debut novel last year, and she's got more coming. She's quite good. She was in the CIA. I am reading a book right now. There was a debut novel in 2024, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing his last name, Michael Edoff, Idov.
It's a wonderful book. The
Collaborators.
Yeah.
Wonderful spy
I loved
novel.
it.
And
It
that was
was-
his debut novel.
Yeah,
and,
it was one of our first mystery
IDOV,
picks.
and I saw they have a paperback copy here.
Yeah.
And
At one point, we had autographed copies because it was a debut. It was the first mystery pick for us.
yeah,
I loved it. I
It's-
thought it
it's a
was
great
terrific.
book. It's a
There's
great book.
a woman writing for Kensington. She's written 3 books whose name I can't remember, who's extremely good.
Yeah.
And Alma Katsu kind of goes
Alma
back and
Katsu
forth.
is quite good.
And she has a new book on my shelf, but I haven't looked at it to see if it is a spy story or if it's a horror ghost story.
Oh.
I haven't opened it up.
Oh, Kathleen Kent is good. David McCloskey is quite good.
David is
McCloskey,
wonderful, and he
yeah.
will be here. He's got another book
He's got a new one coming
with
out.
called The Persian. And, there's a new book out, a nonfiction book called King of Kings
Yeah.
that's had a terrific review about the Shah of Iran and how we totally blew it. We had absolutely no
Yeah.
clue what we were doing, and
Yeah.
neither did the Shah. And so David, who was stationed there, as I
Yeah,
understand it,
No,
has
he's
a new
quite
book, The Persian, and he'll be here to sign
And he
it.
has humor in his novels.
Yes, he does.
Quite a bit of humor in his books.
He'll be
so.
here on September 18th to sign it with Mike Woodward, who is now writing Tom Clancy Jr., Jack Ryan Jr., and I'm missing a person. Oh, Jack Stewart, who is another agent who's writing very well. And then Don Bentley, our perennial host, may show up for that one. But there's a lot of
Yeah,
people really
there are.
doing good work in the field. But at the moment, I have to ask myself what they're writing, because all these books we're talking about
Yeah.
were written before the election.
Well, they are, but you also see, a lot of spy novelists are always going to have novels now and then, even now, that go back to the Cold War,
Yeah.
or that have some remaining thread left over from the Cold War. It's still fertile ground for people because
Well, it really
it's
is.
still vivid in the imagination of so many of us who grew up during the Cold War. So.
Very true. Anybody else? Question? No, just
No.
admiring.
I am curious,
Yeah.
what makes a good transition from book to film? Is it, because so many times I'll read the book and I go, oh my gosh, this is great. And then
Yeah.
I read the film, I go, oh,
Yeah.
is it the writing with the film? Is it the acting? I don't want to name names and throw anyone under
No,
the
I
bus,
think if you want to see a great adaptation, is the Slow Horses adaptations. I think the casting is perfect, and the writing is perfect, and he captures everything. Yeah. So and some of Le Carré's early novels, they did a totally horrible job of adapting them, and he hated some of those. Some of them they adapted very well, like the Tinker Tailor series. But so I think I don't think it's that difficult to do it. It's just I think Hollywood sometimes takes it and they think, oh, well, this is good material, but we need to sex it up and we need to do this and that, and it's got to have a happy ending, and they lose their way. So I think that's usually the biggest problem is they think they know better, and they'll take a book that really worked in a certain way and they'll destroy the thing that made it work.
Well, also part of it is that if a lot of the book is interior dialogue and so forth, it's hard, to turn that into film
hard to
because
do,
the film
but-
is all dialogue, and you don't have to describe, the scene because the camera does that, and you can't watch people thinking. They have to
Yeah.
actually
No,
tell you.
that's
I noticed,
absolutely
in
true,
fact,
yeah.
in watching Ballard, the continuation of Michael Connelly's Harry Bosch series,
yeah.
that the way they deal with a lot of what might have been interior is their phone rings all the time. So they don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to be in conversation with people.
Right.
What they can be doing is just answering their phone,
Yeah.
and then it's dialogue, and
Right,
that's a
right.
new thing that
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
solves some of the problems of
Yeah.
the guy sitting alone at his desk, and it's
Yeah.
midnight, and he's poured a drink,
Yeah.
and before somebody would have had to come into the room, but now
Yeah.
his phone could just ring.
Yeah. There are a lot of devices for getting into that sort of inner monologue without having to have a voiceover. And some directors and screenwriters do that very well. But,
Sure. And casting is a big part of it too.
Yeah.
Don't forget. Sometimes
Yeah.
sometimes casting is really good, and sometimes
Yeah.
sometimes it's weak. I've been very disappointed with a couple of adaptations of authors I like. I will not, like you, will not mention them.
Yeah, yeah.
But the casting is what killed it.
When I go, wow, that was such a good book.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Or
would an author ever, in collaboration, say, no, that doesn't work?
It depends on the contract. Usually, yeah, you can. I mean, once you sign the rights, it's the right to let them do whatever they want with
yeah.
it.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So that's partly why they pay you a nice amount of money just for signing your name in triplicate.
Elmore Leonard said that very well. He said, when it's a book, you wrote it, it was like your car, and you got to drive it. And then when you sold it, they get to drive it. It's
Of course,
not
by
your car anymore.
seeing how the sausage was made, Elmore Leonard
Right.
got Get Shorty, which was a great book, and then it was a great film.
Yeah.
That was a great adaptation.
But he had a really realistic approach to it.
He did.
I
He
mean, when
did.
he sold it, it was gone.
Right.
You
have to think of it that way because it's no longer your creation.
Right.
It's
And
something
Raymond
else.
Chandler wasn't allowed to write his own screenplays. It was
Yeah.
so. It's a real transition. I think long form television has been a godsend for
It
an
has
awful
been.
lot of books. Where trying to shoehorn a whole novel into a movie,
Right.
has
No, it really is better.
But long form,
He may have.
I
know.
don't. I don't remember. I know The Big Sleep. He did not write the screenplay because that's one of my favorite stories ever.
Great book, incredibly complicated movie.
Yeah, with about 50
Yeah.
unanswered questions, which
Yes.
at the end.
And then I don't know who wrote The Lady in the Lake. Where they put the camera in. It was like a first-person camera,
Yeah.
which was not done very often, but kind of interesting. And there's also, if you ever get to watch the director's cut of The Big Sleep, the scene that actually makes sense out of the whole thing, it turns out was cut because Lauren Bacall's agent was pushing for her to have more screen time because she was new. And so if you watch the director's cut and they put the scene back, the movie actually does make sense at that point. I was enchanted to watch it because,
Yeah.
I mean, the movie has this gaping hole in it.
Yeah, yeah.
Twice and seen the movie like 5 times.
Well, find
Yeah,
the
yeah.
director's cut version of it. There it does exist, and it will clear up many of your questions about. But even Chandler, when somebody else, I don't remember who was writing the screenplay, and they called up and said, "Ray, I think it was the chauffeur. Ray, what happened to the chauffeur?" Or whatever that question was, and Ray said, "Damned if I know." He was not 100% plot driven.
Yeah,
That's
that's true. If we
yeah.
could get a good wisecrack in. That would
Well,
better.
I mean, people love Chandler not just for the plot. I mean, not for
Yeah.
the plots, but
No,
more
it's
for
the great.
characters and his
Yeah.
fabulous evocation of time and place. Yeah, time and place. And I remember Michael Conley years ago. We did a program way back when he was a baby author. He was 1995. We had a convention here. And he read something from Chandler. And the line that's always stuck in my mind was something, but I don't remember how it went, but something or other. And the jacarandas were in bloom again. And, and every time I drive down
Yeah.
Scottsdale Road in the spring, and there are a whole bunch of jacaranda trees on Scottsdale Road, and I always kind of do a little salute, to Ray for the jacarandas because they are so distinctive with that
Yes.
beautiful sort of purple blue color and the whole bit. He had some lyrical, right? That's why a lot of people prefer Dorothy Sayers to Agatha Christie. It's kind of similar to the Hammett
Yeah.
kind of a thing. Right. So there's a lot of really great classic spy stuff, some of which is not terribly well known today. Have you ever gone back and read some of the really early stuff?
Yeah, I did because I one of my earlier novels was kind of an homage to spy fiction. It was called The Double Game,
Right.
and one of the main characters was a fictional spy novelist. And of course, I got emails for several years of people saying, I can't find his books. And I was like, well, I
Right.
hate to break it to you. But so, and in that one of his father of the main character was a collector of classic spy novels from the 50s, the
Right.
60s. So, yeah, so in researching that, I looked through a lot of those old novels and I compiled about, there was something like, and that was as of the early 1990s. By then, there were about 18 pretty well-known novelists who had been spies themselves,
Right.
including Le Carré, including Charles McCary, who was wonderful, American writer.
See, I go
Graham
all the way.
Greene.
I go all the way back to Ernest Childers.
Erskine Childers was
Erskine,
the
right.
first, and I just got an email about him because I mentioned that he
it
was an
19
Irish revolutionary, but eventually was
Executed
after
by the British.
executed by the Irish.
Oh, was the Irish,
Yeah,
right? For his
and
role.
I believe in the book I might have mentioned that he was hanged or something, and this guy wrote me said actually he was shot, the traitor, and so it was. So yeah, he wrote The Riddle of the Sands, which a lot of people consider the first
Which I've read.
espionage novel.
Yeah. Even Holmes had, it's the one about the submarine. I'm trying to remember. Is it the Blue Carbuncle?
That I don't know.
Patrick, can you look it up? I'm pretty sure it's it has to do with the Germans. I'm pretty sure it's a submarine spy thing, but even Conan Doyle turned
Yeah.
his hand towards
Yeah.
a spy novel.
Yeah.
So, and there were golden age,
Yeah.
1930s.
Yeah.
Eric Ambler,
Eric Ambler, wonderful books.
Yeah.
Coffin for Demetrios.
Right.
And Empire of Fear. A couple of
the
others.
Somerset Mom write a spy story? Don't I think he did?
He
somehow?
wrote.
W. Somerset Mom to be.
Well, and Joseph
foreign.
Conrad wrote The
Right.
Confidential Agent.
Yeah.
So
Oh, and what's his name? The movie with Robert. The famous British movie with Robert Donat.
that I don't know.
It'll come to me.
All right.
Right. Again.
Bratislava. I think that's
No,
the
I know
Yeah.
Bratislava. We're going to
Yeah.
live with that. No, it's a very famous, and the climax takes place in a British music hall.
The 39 Steps.
Yes, thank you. That's
Okay.
it. See, yay! Worked out right.
And that was, yeah.
Comic musical.
Yeah. No, I mean the 39 Steps was. I remember seeing
John
it as
Buchan, I
a
believe.
child. Yeah,
John
right.
Buchan wrote that, yeah.
Scottish author.
Movie from the 30s was still a great film.
Yeah, I mean, you could even go all the way back to Alexander Dumas and look at some of his, even the Three Musketeers in a way is kind
Now-
of a spy novel.
A novel and movie of intrigue, but not really a spy novel. But my favorite all-time movie is The Third Man.
Yeah.
And and that was Graham Greene. Well, a lot of people think, oh, yeah, it was based on the Graham Greene novel. Actually, Greene wrote the novel based on his screen treatment.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so the novel came second. And he initially he wanted to write a happy ending. This was a rare case where Hollywood, or this was a British film, so it wasn't Hollywood, which is probably why they got it right, where David Lean basically said, was it David Lean? Who was it? I think it was David Lean. No, I may have the director wrong. No, Carol Reed was the director.
Okay.
Carol Reed was the director, but decided that it would not have a happy ending. And Graham Greene, when he saw the film, said, "You were right. It's he cannot get off. Well, leave with the girl. He has screwed up, and he'll go home sad."
Yeah.
So it's got that great ending where he's waiting for her, and he throws away his cigarette, and she walks right past
Right.
him. And I mentioned this when I was in New York last week too. It also has The Third Man has the best ever backhanded compliment to a writer, because the main character is Harley Martin's a writer of hack westerns, and it's a throwaway line in the movie, but any writer picks up on it right away. As he and Sergeant Payne, the British sergeant, are coming into the hotel, the door opens and you hear the end of Sergeant Payne, his only fan in Vienna of his westerns. is overheard saying, "That's what I like about your book, sir. You can pick them up and put them down anytime." So,
Oh, that is backhanded. So I'll do a shout out to Manning Coles, who wrote two of my favorite spy novels ever, A Toast to Tomorrow and Green Hazard. And those took place. They
Oh,
were
wow.
British agents during World War II. I think it's really hard to beat Green Hazard for humor and A Toast to Tomorrow
I haven't
for...
read those. So.
You're kidding.
No.
Oh, well, we could have a try. You know, one of the great things about what we are calling the spy genre is it's an enormous umbrella.
It is.
It really is.
It
You
is.
know, you
and
can.
It's been around a while.
Yeah, it does. And I think, you know, at the heart, there's this kind of constant question. You know, what would make somebody betray their country? You know, what would make somebody, you know, risk their life to serve abroad? I mean, there's some very deep and very
Well, and there's-
human and ethical questions.
There's so many great themes in spy novels that test character.
Right.
It's like you said, betrayal, loyalty, secrecy, and also identity. What does it do to someone who has to pretend to be someone else for such a part of their life? Who are they after a while? Which
Right.
identity is really that person, or if either of them? And if they're hiding things from the ones who are closest to them, often for reasons to keep those people safe, what else do they become willing to hide from those people? If they become experts at hiding things from them, who do they open up to, if anyone?
Right.
So it's so many wonderful themes that shape characters, and it's just great for a writer to take that on. If you want to see a series that looks at that theme of identity, what it does to a person to be a spy in the long term, there's that French series, The Bureau.
Oh, right.
The greatest spy television series ever. I'd put it up against anything British, American, The Bureau. 5 seasons. It's a little hard to find, but there's something like 50 episodes. It's in subtitles, so you have to put up with that, but amazing series. And there was an American equivalent of the first seasons of it that came out last year called The Agency, and that was well done as well. But to me, you just can't top The Bureau. It's the best thing. It's as good as a series like, say, The Wire. It's really outstanding television.
Well, there you are. So, see all the valuable things you gained from coming to this event tonight? Well,
That's right.
you know, the thing is, and it's always, when you're talking to somebody whose book has just come out, there's a limit to what you can actually discuss. Otherwise, you're going to spoil the book for people. I often wish that book tours were like 6 months. You know, I mean, seriously.
I don't wish that.
No, but you know, there's a whole different discussion that one
Right.
could actually have if you could assume the audience. I've done a few of those. Brad Thor and I have done 2, I think, where
Yeah.
we have gone back a few months after one of his Scott Horvath books has come out, so that we could really talk about. You know, the issues in it and the resolution.
Yeah.
So that's one reason we always digress, because, you know, if we're going to fill some time, we can talk about interesting things. So I'm glad we did this. Patrick and I would also recommend Philip Kerr. Not all of his
Philip
books
Kerr's
were
wonderful
spy
stuff.
novels. Some of them
He
were
had some
more...
great Russian spy novels.
yeah, some of them were more straightforward police novels, but definitely I would put some...
And Alan First.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Alan First on the eve of the Second World War.
And actually, Nelson DeMille's first collaboration with his son Alex was an interesting spy novel set in Berlin. And I'll be talking to Alex, who will both have a hard time because we're going to have to do it without Nelson since he died. We've been exchanging emails about how difficult it will be. No, Robert Littell is still another one. Yeah.
An American that
Yeah.
great CIA novels. Yeah, Charles McCary, I mentioned
Yeah.
earlier. Yeah.
And a lot of them, you know, are aging really well. I mean, they've kind of become historical fiction, but nonetheless, the
Yeah.
themes in them and all are, well, I mean, we haven't even mentioned, you know, early Daniel Silva until he retired.
Right.
Gabriel did some marvelous spy stories for sure. And Brad Thor. Scott Harvath is an action hero, but nonetheless, there's a bunch of interesting spy accoutrement to all of that. So we've been lucky over the years, haven't we, to host so many great spy novelists here, including Dan. So thank you all very much for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you, virtual audience. Thank you, audience, for coming to join us. And if you would like to get your book signed or take a photo or visit with Dan, now is your chance, right? If you're looking for one, sir, they're up in the front. Oh, you can even have this one.